One of the conversations we've been having in Canada for the last few years, and it's gained more and more traction, is the idea of a guaranteed annual income. We know that there's a report today on child poverty, and of course I always said it's somewhat misleading because it's not so much that the children are poor, their parents are poor, the families are poor. And so how do we fix that? How do we make sure that Canadians are not living below the poverty line? And one of the potential solutions is a guaranteed annual income. Well, we've had a number of conversations about that over the years, but there's a professor of economics at Laval University by the name of Stephen Gordon who's been doing some writing about this, and he has concluded that despite all of the upsides and all of the kind of obvious benefits of having a guaranteed annual income, or a GIA, I beg your pardon, that it might cost us up to $800 billion to implement it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the cost of doing it versus the cost of not doing it. We're joined by Sheila Regehr, who's with the Basic Income Canada Network, and she is in the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. Sheila, good morning. Thanks for being with us today.
Hello, Jeff.
There are all the upsides, right? If you give everybody who needs it a couple of grand a month so that they're at least out of poverty, that seems like a real good idea, right? But there's a price tag attached to that.
There are a lot of upsides coming from lots of different people. I mean, we're looking at better health, we're looking at better educational outcomes, we're looking at people having easier transitions between jobs. There are so many ways in which it supports people.
All right. So, given that, there is a point, though, at which we say we can't afford it, and that seems to be the stumbling block here. So, in your sense, when you take a look at, because I know you've looked at Professor Gordon's math on this, do you agree with it?
Well, the math becomes tricky, so I'd like to back up a little bit and start with, in some senses, where he starts, and that if there's a really good reason to do something, and there's political reasons and economic reasons, and it's of value to society, then in my mind, you find a way to do it. And I think there are ways to do it. When you start getting into the math, there are a lot of people that have done kind of back-of-the-envelope sorts of things. And that's what it sounds like to me that he's doing. And people who quote these really, really high numbers are looking at a very particular kind of design, and in my view, only half of the issue. So what he's talking about, these, huge hundreds of billions of dollars, that would be if you do very simple math and decide you're just going to give everybody an amount and nothing much else changes.
Right, because 800 is the way
things work. That's a gross amount. But if one of the reasons that we strongly argue that people need a basic income is for security, better equality, our goal is not to provide some millionaire with an extra $20,000 a year. There are ways in the tax system, there are ways in our existing systems that we've redesigned things so the cost becomes reasonable.
Have you ever been able to crunch those numbers yourself?
BICN actually is in the process of doing some modeling. We've got a couple of economists working with us, and we've been developing some parameters. There are also other people who have done a good deal of writing on this and shown several ways in which we can find the resources for this. And if you have a minute, I can quickly identify 5.
Yeah. Because this is a conversation we got to have, Sheila, right? Like you say, I think in principle we all think, or many of us anyway, think that this is a good idea, but there is a line where we say this isn't doable. So make it doable for us.
Yeah, so it means, unless you're willing to have a drastic increase in taxes, we are suggesting that you need to redesign the tax system and that you really do have to look at taxes, but there are lots of things you can do. So the first is you claw back from the wealthy. We do this with old age security for Canada's seniors. Once you start reaching higher incomes, we claw the money back. That happens to me. It's fine. We accept that. The second is that there will be administrative savings. They might not be as much as people think, but they're have our different welfare systems across the country and all the bureaucracy and the policing and everything that's involved in administering all of these other programs, we'll have some savings there. We redesign our priorities. David McDonald at the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives has got a list of tax breaks in Canada worth almost $103 billion. And the vast majority of that goes to people in the upper income brackets. We have all sorts of subsidies that go to corporations and the affluent. We can take a look at those. As I said, all of these tax exemptions, and there are new sources of finance that people have proposed. There's the idea of a sovereign wealth fund. I mean, this has been tried in Alaska, and it works. And it doesn't have to be resource-based. We simply look at what the wealth of a country is and figure out a way to share that better so that everybody benefits from their contributions to the economy and to the country. Then there are ideas like a financial transfer tax. That idea has been around for a while. In Canada, we're one of the few who doesn't have some sort of inheritance or wealth tax. And then there's the idea of taxing the robots. So there are ways to do this.
Is our solution to everything tax?
Well, much of this is, but it doesn't have to be the personal income tax system. Like I said, there are subsidies for corporations. There are lots of ways in which our policies have been designed to favor the wealthy. And that's why we've come to a situation now where so many people are demanding a basic income, because inequality and people's insecurity at the lower end is just off the map. Like, this is getting really serious, and you see it in individual dislocation of people having difficulty, but you see it in societal disruption too. It's not a good recipe for the future. So while doing a basic income that is reasonable and gives people a good amount of money, will cost a reasonable amount of money, we have the resources to pay for it. And we get a better benefit out of it. And even he agrees with that. I mean, we get a better society. We're investing a lot of money in things now that we're not getting any payback out of. The cost of poverty is enormous.
Well, we know there's plenty of government programs that are just there because they've been there for a long time. But the political will doesn't seem to exist because, as we all know, Sheila, there's nothing so permanent as a temporary government program.
Exactly. But there are times in history where significant changes have been made, and I think for a lot of people, we're seeing that kind of shift being necessary now.
Right, but do we have the
people who are behind basic income, from the high-tech Elon Musks of the world and Mark Zuckerberg's to healthcare professionals? I mean, the range of people who are saying we need a better solution is just growing every day.
No question. But in Canada, I mean, the Musks and of the world are the people who are the boldest of all innovators. In Canada, we don't do bold. We don't do drastic. We do incrementalism. So are you concerned that there isn't anybody in Ottawa who has the courage to do something really bold like what you're talking about, saying we're going to scrap all these other idiotic programs and bureaucracies. We're going to make sure that there is one office that makes sure that all of these people at the low income have got their check every month. And we're going to save the Canadian, over the long haul, we're going to save the Canadian taxpayer a whole bunch of money. But it may throw a whole bunch of bureaucrats out of work. Who's going to do that?
So to me, this is one of the best news stories for Canada, and where I think we're really ahead of the game in the world. We have a form of basic income for seniors in Canada. We have a partial basic income. These are unconditional incomes for families with children. And again, as you were saying earlier about child poverty, it's not about the children. It's about their parents having difficulty making ends meet. So these child benefits aren't going to the children to buy Star Wars figures and things. It's the working age population with children that's getting this money. Those programs for seniors and for children in Canada have been working so well for so many years. And I believe even the governor of the Bank of Canada was heralding the child benefit as such a powerful economic stimulus. So again, we have more reason to be hopeful for Canada, that we've already got programs that work. We've worked out a lot of the mechanics that Stephen Gordon talks about. And we,
could you ever see
minds to do this?
But Sheila, could you ever see?
It's hard.
No, it's not hard, but could you ever see Justin Trudeau rising in the House of Commons saying, we're going to whack 10,000 civil servants because this is going to be a better program? And can you imagine the response from the PSAC and the political fallout from something like that? I just don't ever see it happening.
So that raises another issue, and that's the specter of job loss. So, I have two comments on that. First of all, even the people in a lot of those areas and social service areas are recognizing that the danger for them for job loss is coming more from automation than anything else. So that's one issue. We need to be aware of that. And the second is that in a basic income environment, it doesn't mean that the need for services is going to go away. It means there are going to be different kind of services needed and that we can probably deliver a lot of those better. I've talked to a lot of social service workers who, they have social work degrees. They want to practice social work, and they're not able because they're spending their time policing money. So by redesigning our programs and rethinking how we do things, we can invest our money so much better and not have to face a lot of job loss.
Sheila Regehr, thanks, Lynn. It's always great to chat with you and kick this around because it appears, and I mentioned Canadian incrementalism, we're incrementally moving in this direction, but I don't know if we'll see it in our lifetime or not, but it looks like we're headed in that direction.
I'm hopeful that we will. I think all the signs are pointing that way.
Sheila Regehr is with the Basic Income Canada Network. Sheila, again, thanks very much. We'll chat again, I know.
Great to talk to you. Thank you.